Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar, Building Resilient Provider Networks, Insights and Strategies for the Future. My name is Annie Falcone, and I'm excited to moderate this discussion about future-proofing provider networks. We're going to hear from two experts for this webinar. We're thrilled to be joined today by Jeff Fritz, CEO at Andros, as well as Stephen Mueller, partner at CreoCreate. Jeff brings over 20 years of experience in healthcare and technology to his role as CEO of Andros. A recognized visionary in business strategy, he's known for fostering innovation and driving growth in the organizations that he leads, including successfully selling several early-stage companies. With a passion for mentorship, Jeff actively supports aspiring entrepreneurs within the Minnesota healthcare and technology ecosystem. Thank you for joining us, Jeff.
Thanks, Annie.
And Stephen is a seasoned leader with over 20 years of experience delivering large-scale, technology-enabled programs that are focused on customer relationships and advanced analytics. He's led transformative initiatives across healthcare operations and has pioneered clinician risk adjustment initiatives. He has designed AI-driven solutions that integrate clinical and predictive models to personalize member communications. With deep expertise in leveraging shared service capabilities across large organizations, Stephen brings a strategic approach to automation, operational efficiency, and data-driven decision-making. Welcome to you, Stephen. We are so glad that you are both here, and today we are going to explore the benefits of a network lifecycle platform, strategies to future-proof your provider networks, and how to leverage actionable data insights for optimal performance. With expert insights and real-world examples, Jeff and Stephen will guide you through a framework to design, build, and manage resilient provider networks that adapt to evolving industry needs. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff to kick us off.
Thanks, Annie. Well, welcome everybody. This is a real pleasure for us to be with you today. And Stephen and I thought we would just make this very conversational, share with you some of our thinking around the Network Lifecycle Platform that supports these provider networks that are in the healthcare ecosystem today. By way of introduction, like Annie mentioned, I've done a lot of early work in companies that are transformational technologies. My first one that was focused on consumer-driven healthcare when HSAs were just coming out. Did a lot of work fostering positive health actions with another company using AI. So how do I get people to do things for their health using some AI-powered communication technology? And now I have the pleasure of leading Andros into a next generation of provider networks management using this concept of a network lifecycle platform technology. I want to welcome a good friend of mine, Stephen, to the conversation. Stephen, would you mind just sharing with everybody a little bit about your background?
Absolutely. Thanks, Jeff. I come from a Big Six consulting background. First 10 years of my career kind of spent on large scale, multiple clients across several different industries, and then transitioned into United Health Group, working specifically in United Healthcare on the physician and hospital contracting network solution space. Supporting that business, was the CIO there for about 10 years. And then transitioned over to Optum, which was the healthcare services side of the business, where I spent about 10 years working as the leader of the Medicare Advantage operation function across global operations, supporting United Healthcare and several commercial clients. I ended my time at Optum in the last couple of years working on advanced analytics, artificial intelligence, machine learning, to improve operational efficiency and also predict disease progression, so that we could get people on the right care pathways and get them to the right providers. So now I'm working closely with Jeff on a lot of different initiatives, and it's fun to be here.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. So let me set the stage a little bit. I'll run through what we're going to talk about. The first thing is the economists that are out there are really studying the changing world population. I love the phrase that they're using out there, demographics is destiny. And the demographics kind of fall into a bunch of buckets. There's this global population shifts that are accelerating around there. So just imagine people moving around the globe. And there's also a microcosm in the US population shifts that are not just the aging of our population. So everyone talks about the baby boomers aging in, but the migration, people moving around the country that are really impacting the work that we're doing. There's a whole nother aspect of the clinical provider population. So who is available to serve the health needs of today and the future, and where are they in their careers, in their geographic area? Are they moving? Are they changing? Um, on top of that, there's a strained healthcare educational system. Are we producing? Are we minting um, really good providers for the future in all different categories? And then there's this big supply and demand force. There's more money. Is it going to require more money? Are we getting more effectiveness? How is it impacting satisfaction of not only the people that are being served, but the people serving those people? So all of those things kind of fall in this demographics changes. The second thing we want to touch on today is the health insurers and risk-bearing providers. They're realizing the cost of expanding provider network, the cost of the expanding provider network challenges. The challenges are expanding and it's costing them a lot. So provider networks are failing to serve their member populations. This is a real frustration in a lot of corners of the healthcare ecosystem. Growing challenges in access, growing challenges in information, harder to get consumer choice out there. And a lot of the provider networks that are out there were almost solely built on geographic coverage. So we got enough to cover this area, but that's just not enough to solve these other areas around access, information, consumer choice. The provider networks have historically not been built on product market fit, where product is the clinical providers and the financial arrangements, and the market is the healthcare needs of the membership over time. So we're really struggling with what does that yield for us in our healthcare system. Then lastly, we want to drill into this rise of what's called the Network Lifecycle Platform. How do we optimize the performance using data to help better connect clinicians, the clinician ecosystem with the member ecosystem? So, and that looks like it's almost predictive. If a stakeholder in the healthcare system could answer the question, if I knew X, if I knew something was going to happen, I would do Y, and I would use Z system to do that. So an X might be, if I knew a provider was likely to retire in the next 5 years, I would do Y. I would think about who I would want to backfill that provider with, and I would use Z system. I would use my provider relations organization or my CRM platform to accomplish the goal. So that's what we got teed up for today. I'm going to start with this industry landscape and challenges. This changes in population. I want to get your thoughts here, Stephen, on the shifts in the U.S. population. I was doing a little bit of reading. If you want to go to sleep at night, start reading census information. It's not really engaging written, but there are some really nice graphical summaries of what's happening out there. And I found that the regional population growth and decline trends are really interesting regionally. So the South is the fastest growing region. And some are predicting that from the pandemic ahead 30 years, there's like a 40% shift towards the South regions, Texas, Florida, the Carolinas, Georgia, Tennessee. There's a lot of migration into those due to a lot of things: warmer climate, higher domestic migration from the Northeast, business-friendly policies. Um, and so there's that against the lowest, the biggest population decline would be like the Northeast, New York, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Massachusetts, high costs, aging population, cities like Boston, Philadelphia, um, losing a lot of their older workforce. So how are you kind of experiencing it from a healthcare lens, Stephen, when you've been thinking about the demographics?
You know, really, it's something over the last 10 years. 10 years ago, we started thinking about, or probably even earlier than that, the migration to what we call the Sun Belt from Arizona all the way over to Florida. And when you think about, kind of my area of focus was Medicare Advantage and the senior population. We saw a big influx in that Sun Belt region happening over time, and the trend saying it's just going to intensify. I think what you see today is it's not just in the senior population. We're seeing it even broader than that, where you have people that have not aged into that population yet that are migrating south. And so I agree that we're seeing this swell in the South, and do we have the right supply capacity of physician networks to be able to support that swell in the right disciplines and specialties, right? So that it's kind of a Rubik's cube of how do you predict what's going to end up happening, and you got to be thinking with a lens 2, 3, 5 years out in order to make sure that you're ready for it. But I agree with everything you said. It's coming true, and it's coming true exponentially fast.
Yeah, and when I think about the effects on the healthcare system post pandemic, there's a lot of burnout of clinicians. So we're losing, we're losing a lot of clinicians to retirement. And those who want to go part-time, they're going to go part-time, maybe in a warmer climate where they can walk the beach in the morning and then see a few patients through a telemedicine out of Florida. So there's that, and juxtapose that against this hybrid work environment. So a lot of the commercial populations have gone, Andros is a great example. We used to have an office in New York City, one in Maryland. So we had satellite offices. We have a small collaboration space that we use for gathering people together. But people that were doing their job in Manhattan have moved to Idaho because they want a different kind of lifestyle outside of work. So those two things seem to be clashing together to form this storm of change that is really a challenge for these networks to react to.
Just to add some statistics to that, when you think about that 37% of healthcare employees say they're likely to leave their employer in the next 12 months, 37%. And that it's projected in the United States, we'll be short 124,000 physicians by 2035. So, it's certainly a problem, or it's certainly a complicating factor that you got to think about.
I was at a first world problems. I got to be at a healthcare summit in Jackson Hole last week, and we were talking about how do you fill that gap. One concept that was being floated out there was dentistry. The dentist is in a unique position to expand the preventative care, or the early indicator care to a population that maybe they can't get through a primary care, a shortage of primary care physicians. So you might go get your teeth cleaned, and you might have to step on a scale and get a blood pressure rating in order to start to share information a little more holistically. Have you seen any other PT or alternative care being brought up as part of the solution?
Well, I think given the pandemic and the effect of the pandemic, we have migrated to really a mode of really a mode of virtual care being first and foremost for a lot of Americans. I think in the US, it's starting to become more of a preferred platform. It's more convenient. I don't have to get in my car, go anywhere. I can get on a video call with a physician. We can kind of go through what's going on and like that and get prescribed something or figure out what the next step is. So, I think that platform is going to accelerate dramatically over the course of the next couple of years, and we need to be prepared for that. At the same time, you look at these rural environments where hospitals are closing, ERs are closing, there's a physician shortage there. Whether it's video or other solutions, it's ripe for lots of different strategies and lots of opportunities.
Speaking, so let me take the strategies and opportunities angle. So let's call that a half full angle on things that are challenging versus a half empty version on it, which is, hey, we're in real trouble here. We can't provide the care we need. You had forwarded to me a post that you read, and I'd like you to share it with everybody a little bit, or some of the thinking on it. I want to get your take on it first, and give me a half full versus half empty feeling on it.
Well, we spent the beginning of the conversation really talking about the physician landscape and the network landscape, which has its challenges. When you think about the population of the United States and their general health decline and where it's headed over the course of the next couple of years, the statistics are staggeringly scary. So 74% of US adults are either overweight or obese. 74%. And 50% of children, half of the children in the United States are obese or overweight. 50% of the population has type 1 or type 2 diabetes. 38% are pre-diabetic. 18% of teens have fatty liver disease. And when you boil that all down, all that represents metabolic dysfunction. And metabolic dysfunction really feeds the top 12 chronic disease conditions, which is 90% of all the spend and all the activity in the healthcare space. So if you want me to go back to, is the glass half empty, glass full? Boy, I think the glass is full. We're in the healthcare solution space, right? What better place to be in than to be in the solution space to help solve some of these problems? And the problems are getting worse, right? So it's ripe for bringing creative, strategic solutions to this landscape to solve some of these problems. And it's a space I'm glad I'm playing in today because there's just a ton of opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, just on the obesity, this whole wild west of GLP-1 prescribers out there is just it's just amazing. And I'm curious to see the impact. Going back to last week, is the GLP-1 market a gateway to get people to feel better about themselves so that they start exercising, feel better about themselves so they start making better lifestyle choices, feel better about themselves so they start having a better consumption diet. And boy, if this thing that just kind of gives somebody a boost into healthier living, that could be a really, really nice a nice effect going into an aging population conversation as you start to need knee replacements. It's harder to do with somebody who's overweight. So there's a ripple effect to everything that we talk about as far as the innovations that we could have.
GLP-1, we are in the infancy of understanding exactly the long-term implications of being on those drugs. Some people have to be on those drugs, and I get that, and I'm not a clinician. But when you really think about once you start that drug, you're never getting off of it. And, it could have could be glass full, right? Half full, that it stimulates all this change. It could be half empty in terms of it just, it's like metformin was 15 years ago of, well, I'm taking metformin, so I don't need to worry about sugar and carbs.
Right.
It's yet to be seen, but it's going to be a pretty interesting journey that we go through.
Yeah. Amen to that. Well, let's move on to kind of this concept of the dimensions of a network. So I kind of teed up this: if I knew X, I would do Y, and I would use Z system of it. There's a concept that we're talking about in our shop called the data maturity model, and this data maturity model has multiple dimensions to it. So oftentimes a data maturity model starts with, can you describe it? So this describe phase, this D, the first D, is multiple data sources. And so in the network space, I hear thrown around this provider data management, or PDM, and oftentimes it's described as a noun. I have a PDM, and what they're trying to say is, I'm taking in multiple data sources and I'm trying to get the best possible source of truth around a provider, and that's what a PDM is trying to do. The next phase is the second D, if you will, diagnose. So why do certain things change within that model? Is there aging out of clinicians? Are there different licensures that are coming up? Whatever's driving the changes. The third one would be, can I predict? Can I anticipate? Well, this is going to end up shaping this way or that way, and I need to be ready. So that third dimension is called prediction. So I've gone through, I can describe it, I can diagnose it, I can predict it. And then the fourth one would be, I can prescribe what I'm going to do next. I'm going to add providers. I'm going to shift my focus to this thing that I've just predicted, solving for this thing. And the last thing that I think is the missing link, that these are the folks in our shop, and I think others in the industry that we talk to, is, can I implement it? Can I activate? So we call it activate. So that fifth dimension: describe, diagnose, predict, prescribe, activate. Can I actually do something about it? Seems to be the next frontier around data. Health economics is a place you came out of, with one of the leading health economics teams in the country, in the world probably, over at United Optum. And I'd be really curious, how did you guys think about those later dimensions, and how were people talking about, boy, if we take it through all the way, this prediction model, how do I prescribe and activate?
Yeah, for years the model was just build the broadest, most comprehensive network you can build. And then the migration really started to, how do we leverage what we already know about all these members in order to predict who's going to be at what disease burden at what point in time and need what kind of care. And so a big effort the last couple of years is to apply advanced analytics and artificial intelligence and all the rest of it to try to understand that and be able to predict. I always say, skate to where the pucks go and not where the puck is right now, to use a hockey analogy. So that was really kind of the focus the last couple of years, and continues to be the focus on, how do we really get precise about predicting, having the right data and being able to predict disease burden and then utilization of the network, across all the different physician groups and specialties.
Yeah. I am sure anybody listening to this and listening to you talk, they might be sitting in a plan right now that didn't have the heft of resources that a large organization like you came from. And so I'm really curious, I want to tee up the next section, and then I'd like to hear how you could see a regional plan, or a mid-sized risk-bearing entity, like a specialist, multi-specialty organization that's taking risk on contracts, how they might take a step forward. And the way I want to tee it up is, farming, to pick an industry that is seemingly very different than healthcare, has really embraced this idea of tailoring the solution to a very small section of a problem. And when I say small section, I mean a small section of land. So there's this concept in farming that's come out that's called farming by the foot. And it's amazing to me. It's like an Internet of Things case study where these sensors are tracking the ability for a square foot of land to produce a desired outcome. And that square foot of land is tracked through large data, through a lot of sensors and things. But as the implements, the tractors with the nutritions and all of the things that go over this piece of land, sense this square foot and the needs that it has, it's placing those exact prescribed, tailored solutions to make the thing that they want to grow in that square foot flourish. So in networks, just to stretch the metaphor a little bit, the soil is kind of the network. It's like this big piece of land, and the seeds might be the members. And this tractor, the implements are the things that are part of this platform solution. Andros is part of that solution. There's other network lifecycle platform tools out there that need to work together in order to say, hey, there's a deficiency here in this little space, and we want to understand what that deficiency is or might be in the future, and we want to put a solution in place to help shore up the ability for that member to thrive as best they can with this network. So I'm curious, am I stretching the analogy too far? Is it hitting home to you? And B, how would you see a small farmer who can't afford the big tractor and all the tooling? Where do they start? How do they raise their awareness of what they can do with 100 acres versus these farms that own thousands of acres?
All right. Well, if I start talking too fast, it just means I'm excited. This topic kind of excites me. Then you got to just slow me down. I think the size of the organization and not having all the resources of a big Fortune 5 company to just develop any kind of solution, still powerful opportunity to address this space. When you think about the members that are served, and really all these organizations are sitting on a time machine. They can look back in time at the claims for all of these members over time. And you could plot out someone who has vascular disease today and go back 5 years in their history when they did not have vascular disease. You can see the markers of what happened over 5 years to understand, well, here's how they developed vascular disease. Once you train a model on that, now you can apply it to your entire population to say, if I understood these different markers and when they were going to hit, I can predict. I can't prevent the disease, but I can predict when the disease will hit. We also know that 90% of the spend in most organizations are around the top 12 chronic disease conditions. So, COPD, vascular disease, congestive heart failure, diabetes with complication, neuropathy as a result, and the comorbidities of these things. Once we understand that, now we can have a broad network for the 80 to 90% that everybody needs an annual care visit. Everybody needs to make sure that they're not falling into one of those buckets. But you can get tailored, surgical, focused on that 10% where it really matters. And so now if I understand that disease burden, I understand where it's going, I can pivot to provider utilization. And once I understand provider utilization, I can understand, well, what's the cost basis? What's the quality basis, right? I can start looking at the quadruple aim, which every organization's looking at, and figure out what levers do I want to start pulling to either shift members to a different provider that has higher quality, better access, or a better cost basis and gets to better outcomes. So, everything I'm describing, it's not that hard, right? And it doesn't require all the resources of a big organization. It just requires discipline and strategy to go after it. And I always say, maybe it's a bad analogy, but I always say, you can't eat the elephant whole. You got to eat it one bite at a time. And if you're going to eat it one bite at a time, start with the 10%, learn what you can from the 10%, start shifting on that. Make sure the 90% has their annual care visit and has a broad enough network to be able to access it. And then, focus where you can focus. And then you start whittling and you get better and you get better and you get more precise and more surgical. And all of a sudden you have something that is really refined, and then you can start playing with it. That's what I get excited
That's
about.
great.
I think every organization has that opportunity, and I don't think it's that difficult.
Yeah, that's great. I'm curious to get your take on this. So I see there are certain parts of this space that are still very siloed. So it's a little bit, to take my farming analogy, just a little too far maybe. I've got the person who's in charge of irrigation, watering crops, is different than the person who's in charge of nutrition, putting nitrogen in a piece of land. And that's different than a person who's in charge of drainage, to make sure that there's, sufficient drainage. And there has to be this, raise the conversation moment. And I think that's the leaders of these organizations to say, hey, our network is a first-class opportunity within healthcare today. And charting that course around how to bring these things together so that the person doesn't say, hey, not my problem, I watered the field, I can't help it that that plant didn't grow up on that sunny hill. And the nutrition person say, hey, I planted the nitrogen. There is a strategic combination of these different areas that need to come together. So it's not just the credentialing person saying, got them credentialed, I checked their backgrounds, I checked my box, all good. And then the recruitment person says, I recruited everybody for Medicare adequacy, not my problem. The product person is saying, hey, I deliver the package of all the benefits out to our clients, not my problem. There's I think this wave of concern around provider networks now that is elevating this to a conversation to say, listen, folks, we can farm by the foot here. We have this data and technology, to your point, that we can start to predict at this location the reason why this doesn't perform well. We know that we can go back in time and see that this healthcare disease prevalence happens when these situations occur, and that known allows us to predict others in the future. So what's your take on kind of that future proofing and the strategic conversation that needs to happen?
Well, coming at it from a slightly different lens, it also is the element of the connectedness of the healthcare system. When you have individuals going through a healthcare event, they are transacting in the marketplace with different providers, different labs, getting different results. And the individual is not bringing that holistic picture back to their primary care physician or the specialist. So we have very good physicians in the United States. 98% of them want to do the right thing. They want to take the right action. Their panels are very full. They don't have time to see everybody on everything, and they don't have access to all the information. So it's very difficult for them to make all the right decisions. But when they are presented with compelling information that can be pulled together in a uniformed way to say, here's a holistic view of what's going on, and it's compelling, they absolutely make it a priority to say, I will get that person seen, I will figure it out, and we will work through it. And again, I think many of these organizations are in a perfect spot to be able to provide that connectiveness and the compelling evidence back to a physician to be able to treat and improve, get people on the right care pathway, get them to the better health outcome, and all sorts of good things happen on the back end of that in terms of reduced cost, slower disease progression, and so forth. So to your point, there's a huge opportunity to bring the connectiveness together of this and simplify the experience in the network. And many of the organizations that we work with are ripe for being right in the driver's seat of making that happen and having something that really differentiates themselves in the marketplace.
Yeah, there's a technical term, it gets used by technologists a lot, a federated system. So it's typically, hey, there's lots of tools that have to come together to make something work, and so interoperability and a federated system is the key. And the way you're talking, it makes me think it's not just a data thing. Data needs to be federated. I think for Andros to do their job, they need to be open to a lot of different sources of data or views to tackle a particular network design issue or a network optimization issue. Additionally, there are systems that need to be federated. There's not going to be one company that says, hey, everything around Network Lifecycle Platform, we're one ring to rule them all you have to do is work with us and we got everything for you. I think the winner out there is going to be open to partnerships, open
Yeah.
to interoperability, open to building more of a federated system of connectedness. I'm curious, when you're coming out of a big organization like you are and you're thinking about, if I could do it over again for a regional health plan or a regional risk-bearing entity, how do you take the lessons learned from a large organization into a mid-sized organization around this concept of federated systems and federated data?
Well, I think, again, being at the center point of understanding the care that's being given to a member, and being able to bring all of that comprehensive information together, maybe applying advanced analytics and artificial intelligence to understand what's happening for that population, and to bring that back to the physician to highlight, hey, this is the 10% you need to focus on. These are the people that need the care. That's really where the opportunity is to be able to take all that federated information, all the different disparate health systems that they're accessing. People access all these different health systems, and then they go back to their PCP, and the PCP knows this much of what's going on because they don't have landscape around all that. Well, these organizations have the opportunity to take all that information, bring it back to the PCP, and say, here you go, and here's your compelling information. And I think that's going to be the secret to the future of making sure we break down some of these barriers, make sure we highlight where there's problems, where there's compelling evidence that something needs to change. And again, do some course correction with the physicians who are very capable in the marketplace of treating if they just had the time and they had the insight around what was happening.
That's great. This has been great. We could go all day. This is fun. We should make a series out of this. I don't know. I don't know if our podcast abilities are going to get us paid on doing any of these things, but we're trying to champion some thoughts and ideas here. So really appreciate your time with me today, Stephen. The things that we talked about feel like we're really talking about how do you help organizations transform? How do you help them transform into a more flexible, tailored solution that is happening all the time, not in a single moment or a single event, but all the time? This tuning and tailoring of these provider networks to really deliver better results, not only for their organizations but for the consumer, for the member. That's what you and I are both equally passionate about. Probably anybody who's listening to this is feeling like that's their mission and that's what gets them up in the morning. But I really appreciate your thoughts, and I'll invite any of the listeners, if you want to learn more about how Andros is thinking about it, how we might be able to help you navigate the complexity of this network lifecycle platform concept. Stephen and I are available to open a conversation with the folks in your organization. I'm going to turn it over to Annie. Annie's going to talk a little bit about next steps and how we might stay connected. Annie?
Hi, thank you so much, Jeff and Stephen. That was an amazing presentation. I think everybody learned so much from both of you. And before we wrap up, we did want to offer today's audience Andros's latest ebook, Provider Network Management: Tools for Health Plans to Navigate Change. And this ebook dives even deeper into the strategies that you guys discussed today, and it focuses on how health plans can navigate challenges while optimizing network performance. So if you are interested in learning more about what was discussed today, this ebook is a great supplement to the webinar content. You can either email marketing@andros.co to request your copy, or you can visit the resources section on the Andros website and you can download it on your own. So we are out of time today. But before we sign off, I just wanted to thank you, our audience, for joining us today. And a big thank you to Jeff and Stephen again for such a wonderful presentation. Today's webinar will also remain available on demand if you want to review anything that we talked about. And thank you again so much for watching. Thanks to both of you.